Hi, this is Deborah Kitko, Genealogy Librarian with the Wayne County Public Library, Worcester, Ohio. We're in the middle of doing a series. We've already talked about, the birth records. We've had a general conversation going on about the birth, marriage, and death records here at the local level as well as the state level. Today we're going to focus a little bit on marriage records, and I just want to let you know that we do have several indexes here on marriages, but like the birth records and death records as well as the marriage records, you can find many of these records online through FamilySearch.org. And I believe all of them are indexed. If not, you can always go through the catalog and try to find them that way. So we're going to first talk about some of our resources here at the local level. Now, most of our marriage records are kept on microfilm, and we have the microfilm here on marriages from like 1812 through about 1951. After that, you're going to have to probably go to microfilm services to actually acquire a copy of that marriage record, or you may be able to access it over at the courthouse in the domestic relations. The first attempt at doing a marriage record index was done years ago, and this was done by the Wayne County Historical Society, the general section back in 1979. And there was a genealogical section at that point. And this is called 75 Years of Wayne County, Ohio Marriages, 1813 to 1888. And you may wonder, well, if you have a more recent version, why do you still keep the old version around? I like keeping the old version because sometimes it's organized in a slightly different way. And sometimes there may be something that's missed in a later version. This one, it is a little bit more confusing to use. But one thing I do like about this is there is an index in the back, and there's also like female cross-reference. There's a listing of the justices of peace as well as the ministers who were ordained to perform the marriages as well. You can find this information here. The source that we most normally use was published by the Wayne County Genealogical Society, and this was done back in 1997. This is called Index of Marriages of Wayne County, Ohio, 1813 to 1898. Now, why did they choose this time period? 1898, about midway through, is when they started recording the parents' names of the groom and the bride. It is known. This index right here covers those marriage records that do not include the parents' names. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. If you have a male that's under the age of 21 or a female under the age of 18, they could not legally get married without having the signature of a guardian or of a parent. So sometimes you may find a parent or guardian's name listed on a marriage record during this time period. This book is fairly easy to use. The front part is a Groom Index, and it's just by the last name and by the first name. It gives you the date of the marriage. It gives you the volume and the page number, and this is in reference to the microfilm. And it also gives you who the minister was or who the justice of peace would have been who performed that marriage. The second part of the book is by the bride index. So you have the bride's last name, her first name, and you have the volume and the page number. So the early marriage records in Wayne County are very simple. It's basically the bride, the groom, the date of the marriage, the date it was filed, and who married them. So it doesn't give the residence, it doesn't give the parents' names in most cases. Sometimes you can look in our local history, in our local newspapers, and sometimes you may find that so-and-so are married at the house of the bride and at the home of the bride, and it may give the parents' names of the bride, or it may give the parents' names of the groom. There's one article years ago I found that you had a bride and a groom. They weren't from Wayne, they were not residing in Wayne County at the time, but Wayne County was in the middle of the road, and they were here at one time. And so you had a nice little write-up talking about the people who attended the marriage and how they met and why they decided to get married in Wayne County. So that's kind of, you just never know what you may find in those early newspapers. I'd mentioned that we have the marriage records from 1812, 1813, all the way through 1951. And we spent many years, volunteers from the library as well as from the Genealogical Society, who actually decided to try to do an index to the marriages from 1898 to the 1951 time period. Now, by the time we got done with this project, these were already indexed, available on Family Search. But I do, sometimes it's nice to look at a local index because the local indexes are indexed by local people who are familiar with the local names. If you're doing indexing and going by the indexing done by the Family Search or Ancestry, sometimes you don't know who exactly is actually doing the indexing, and they may or may not be familiar with the names, and so you may find some discrepancies there within the names. So we have four volumes now. We do have these on a database. It's not available for the public at this point, but we do have it in book form, and it's in 4 different binders. And you just have to ask the staff members in terms of where these are located at. So we have a volume 1 is the Wayne County, Ohio Marriage Index from 1898 to 1951 by Groom. This one is volume 2, and this was indexed by the bride. And in this one, I'm giving the bride's last name, the bride's maiden name, the first name, middle initial, the groom's last name, first name, his middle initial, the date of the marriage, the volume, the page number, the official's name, and his title, whether he was a minister or a priest or justice of the peace, whatever he may have been. So the volumes 3 and 4, I've actually, sometimes, you may know the parents' names, and the bride may have been married several different times. So we actually did a separate index by the parents' names of the groom and the parents' names of the bride. So this one is volume 3, and this one is the parents of the grooms as listed in the Wayne County marriage records. So there's just a little title page we did, and we actually compiled these back in 2016, so we've had these around for a little bit. And so we do have the groom's last name, the first name, and the father's last name, father's first name. In most cases, the groom's last name and the father's last name should be the same, but there are a few exceptions to the rule. So I think we have this indexed by the groom's last name first, and then sorted by the father's last name eventually. So there are some additional marriage records available for Ohio as well as other states on Ancestry, Library Edition, and like I said, you may also want to check with FamilySearch.org. They may have some of the information there. So I hope this has given you some information, some insight into the marriage records. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact our department at 330-262-0916, or you can contact us through email, and that's genealogy@wcpl.info. And genealogy is spelled Genealogy, or you can always contact me individually, and that is D. Kitko, and that D is in Deborah, K-I-T is in Tom, K-O, @wcpl.info. And if you have not subscribed to any of our YouTube channels, I'd encourage you to do so. You can find a lot of good information, especially during this time when we can't have in-person programs. We're doing a lot virtually. So you may find some crafts, you may find some DIY stuff, you may find some really interesting programs on our YouTube channel. So once again, this is Deborah Kitko with the Wayne County Public Library. I'm just giving a discussion on marriage records. Thank you.